Today, I want to talk to you about a version of financial independence that doesn't get nearly enough credit. And the reason it matters is simple. Once you really understand this version of FI, it can fundamentally change how you see your career, your timeline, and the pressure you're carrying right now. That shift might even happen today during this episode. This conversation is for people who aren't desperate to quit, aren't unhappy enough to blow everything up, look successful from the outside, but know deep down that the way life feels right now isn't sustainable forever. You can keep going, but you don't want to keep going like this. And full financial independence, traditional fire, it feels too far away, too extreme, too all or nothing. That's where Coast Fi comes in. And this is the most empowering idea we'll explore today. You might already be done saving for retirement, even if you're nowhere near done working. And if that turns out to be true for you, then a lot of the pressure you're carrying right now, the urgency, the fear, the feeling that you have to keep pushing, may be completely unnecessary. You've built the career, you're building the portfolio, you're close to freedom. So what now? Welcome to Life After Enough, money, meaning, and the life you design when work becomes optional. I'm Nick, I'm racing towards early retirement and figuring out who I become when the job no longer dictates what I do with my time. Let's get into it. Let's get precise, because Coast Fi is often misunderstood. Coast Fi does not mean quitting work, living off investments, or being financially independent today. Coast Fi means this: you've already invested enough that even if you never invest another dollar, time and compound growth alone will let you coast into your retirement number. From that moment on, your future is already funded. Your investments will do all of the work for you, and work only needs to pay for today. That last line is the whole point. After Coast Fi, your job no longer needs to fund your future. It only needs to fund your present. And that distinction is everything. Let's use an example so this really lands. Meet James. He's 38. His target spending in retirement is $60,000 a year. That means his FIRE number would be about 1.5 million. We'll assume a real rate of return of 8%, and his target retirement age is 60, so traditional retirement. At 8%, money roughly doubles every 9 years. So, 375,000 at 38, James's current age, would be 750,000 at 47, and 1.5 million at around age 56 to 58. James currently has $400,000 invested. That means, whether it feels like it or not, that he's already at Coast Fi at age 38. So if James never saves another dollar or never optimizes his finances again, his future retirement still happens. That's the maths. But the impact of this on your day-to-day life is the part that people overlook. Once you hit Coast Fi, the rules of work change. Before Coast Fi, well, your job needs to fund today and tomorrow. Quitting or slowing down can feel dangerous. Every decision feels high stakes. But once you've reached Coast Fi, well, your investments will fund tomorrow for you. Work only needs to fund today, and pressure drops dramatically. This is where it gets really exciting. James was earning $160,000 before and saving 40% of whatever he earned. After Coast Fi, well, he can go down and earn $95,000 and still be fine, or work 3 days a week, or consult, or switch careers entirely. Nothing breaks in his financial future because it's already handled. It's already done for him by Coast Fi. So before we go any further, I want to be really clear about something. Coast Fi isn't a compromise. In many seasons of life, Coast Fi is actually the perfect tool. Coast Fi shines when what you want isn't necessarily escape, but space. Space to slow down, space to be present, and space to shift your energy without blowing up your future. One of the clearest examples of this would be parenthood. For a lot of people, the years when kids are young are not the years you want to be maximizing income, climbing ladders, or constantly available from a mental perspective. They're the years when time matters more than titles, and energy matters more than earnings. Flexibility matters more than optimization. And Coast Fi gives you that option. If your retirement is already funded by compounding alone, then suddenly you can step back without falling behind and work fewer days without panic. You can choose roles that fit your life, not the other way around. You're not sacrificing your future. You've already paid for it. And it's not just parenthood. Coastfi is so powerful in any season of life where life asks more of you than work should. Caring for aged parents, recovering from burnout or illness, wanting to travel slowly rather than rush, building something meaningful on the side without pressure, or prioritizing health and relationships or mental space. In all of these moments, Coastfi acts like a stabilizer. It lets you say to yourself, I don't need to push right now, and I don't need to feel guilty about it. That's incredibly rare in modern working life. Coastfi redirects your ambition, and it allows you to ask the bigger questions. How do I want this season of life to feel? For many people, that's not about escape. It's about alignment. And in those seasons, Coastfi isn't just good, it's exactly enough. So why isn't Coastfi more popular or talked about? On paper, it sounds incredible. In reality, I think most high achievers ignore it or just go past it. Why? Well, Coastfi requires you to slow down before society tells you it's okay, earn less while you could earn more, step off the prestige treadmill voluntarily, and that can mess with your identity. We're taught that income equals progress, that stepping back is laziness, saying no to things is career suicide. So instead of using Fi as the awesome tool that it is, people keep grinding long after the risk is gone. They stay in accumulation mode in a job they don't want to do out of habit, not necessity. So here's my hot take on Coastfi. I think classic Coastfi is genuinely excellent. It's elegant, it's empowering, and for many people, it's life-changing. But for a very specific group, high performers, ambitious people, those carrying a lot of responsibility, I think it can still feel unfinished. And here's why. Even after you reach Coastfi, you're often still waiting until age 60 or even 65. You still tell yourself, I'm not quite there yet. And psychologically, the finish line still feels very, very far away. On paper, the pressure should ease, but emotionally, for a lot of people, it doesn't. Not enough, anyway, to feel different. And I think that's the limitation. Classic Coastfi secures your future self beautifully, but it doesn't always free your present self in the way people are actually reaching for when they discover financial independence. On my own journey, I reached Coastfi long before I knew it even had a name. I remember playing with compound interest calculators and realizing that traditional retirement was probably already covered. It felt good, it felt reassuring, but it didn't really change anything, because I didn't want to work in a career that I didn't love for another 25 years just because the maths told me I should. That's why traditional FIRE was so magnetic for me, that explosion moment when I figured it all out. It wasn't about the retirement, but it was about the prospect of relief and of security and of this bright future where I had freedom. Through that experience, I also started to see Coastfi differently. And the question in my head then became, what if we kept the same maths, the same compounding, the same long-term safety, but we pulled the feeling of freedom forward? Not at 60 anymore, not to eventually, but to a point where work stops being a source of constant pressure much sooner. To understand why this matters, we need to look at the moment when Coastfi becomes the most powerful. Quick one before we continue. I send a weekly email every Monday morning that goes deeper than the podcast. It's not a recap, it's a separate idea, usually something more personal, plus a question to sit with for the week. It's free, it's one email, and you can sign up at lifeafterenough.com. Link is in the show notes. Okay, back to it. Most people talk about Coastfi as a tool for people early in their career and see it as a kind of first rung on the Fi ladder, maybe before you reach Lean Fi. But Coastfi also becomes incredibly powerful near the end of a traditional Fi path, when your number is in sight, but you're still a few years away. This is especially powerful if you feel burnt out, or mentally you're done, but financially you feel almost there, but not there yet. You're stuck in that miserable just one more year cycle loop, and the last 2 or 3 years feel harder than the first 10 combined. And this is why. I think by this stage in the journey, something important has already happened. Your portfolio is now doing most of the heavy lifting. Those final years of contributions from work don't grow your wealth as much as people think. Rather, it's the compounding engine that's doing the work for you. At that stage in the game, your savings rate matters far less than it did in your early career. Time and market returns are now the dominant force in your portfolio. This means something subtle, but brutal, and it happens psychologically. You're no longer working to build the future. You're just working to top it up, whilst time and compounding do their job. That might even feel awful, because every extra year is now an endurance mission and not progress, or a risk management activity instead of ambition. You're padding out safety upon safety upon safety instead of creating freedom. And I think that's why people get stuck working the same high pressure, high income job, because their fear hasn't caught up with their reality. And that's where CoastFi can be leveraged to change roles. In this scenario, for those nearing financial enough, CoastFi stops being a long-term strategy, and instead it becomes this amazing release valve. If your portfolio is already on track to reach full FI without another dollar saved within the next few years, then the question actually shifts. It goes from how much longer do I have to grind to how little do I actually need to earn now to pay for day-to-day expenses? And that is a radically different question. At that point, you can take your foot off the accelerator. You can take a lower stakes role. You can reduce hours. You can protect your energy. You can stop forcing yourself through another excruciating year, all because the maths finally gives you permission. And once you see that clearly, the last years don't have to be the hardest anymore. They can be lighter, intentional, and human. This leads to my modified version of Classic CoastFi. If Classic CoastFi gives you space, I think my modified version gives you momentum. So instead of asking, am I fully set for retirement at 60? Try asking, am I set to stop needing my high pressure job much earlier? It's the same maths, just a shorter timeline and then a completely different energy. Let's make this real. So let's meet Sarah. She's 40 years old. She's got a current portfolio of $1 million. Her target spending is $60,000 a year, which means her traditional FIRE number is 1.5 million. Her target age to stop working entirely is 45. So here's the key insight. Sarah doesn't need to save her way from 1 million to 1.5 million in the same way she had to go from 0 to 500 or 500 to 1 million. At an 8% real return, her existing portfolio will grow from $1 million to $1.5 million in just over 5 years without adding another dollar. If Sarah walks away from her high-pressure role now at age 40 and takes a lower-stress job earning around $5,000 a month to cover her day-to-day life and leaves her portfolio completely untouched, then full traditional FIRE arrives automatically around age 45. No heroics, no sprint, no one more year. This is the modified CoastFi unlock. From age 40 to 45, the future is already funded. Compound growth does the heavy lifting, and work only needs to pay for today. At that point, Sarah doesn't need to retire. She gets escape velocity. And she could stay in her field, but drop to 2 or 3 days a week, move to a low-stress role, consult, freelance, teach, or try something completely new. This demonstrates a powerful insight most people miss when they talk about CoastFi. If you're currently saving 20, 30, 50, 70% of your income, that savings rate is effectively the pay cut you can take once you reach CoastFi and still be on track. That's why it works. The pressure lifts before full financial independence. The fear eases before you walk away completely from work. And the one more year trap suddenly loses its grip. This is designing a softer, saner landing into freedom. Crucially, without sacrificing your future and without burning yourself into the ground at the finish line. The paradox here, many people are happiest after they stop optimizing money, but before they stop working entirely. And I think that's the sweet spot CoastFi unlocks. Quick pause. If this episode is sparking something for you, hit follow so you don't miss what's coming next. Feel free to share it with someone who'd love it too. It really helps the show to grow. So let's make this actionable and real. I've built a simple Coast-Fi calculator in Google Sheets to make this easy. You can plug in your own numbers and immediately see what's possible. Here's how to think about it conceptually before you even open the sheet. Number 1, decide what future spending looks like. This is the life after enough that you'd be happy with, not the one you're trying to impress people with. Number 2, multiply that number by 25. That gives you your traditional FIRE number, the amount you would need for work to be fully optional using the 4% rule. Number 3, choose your arrival age. Is it 45? Is it 50? Is it 55? Or is it 60? This is a design choice, not a rule. So pick what works for you. Then number 4, run the maths backwards at 8% real returns. This is where the calculator will do all the heavy lifting for you. You're asking one simple question. What do I need invested today so that time can do the rest? When you compare that number to what you've already built, this is often the moment things change, because you might just discover you're already coasting, or you're much closer than you thought, or that you now have a clear, motivating target, not a vague, endless grind. And the goal here isn't perfection, it's just clarity, because once you see the numbers laid in front of you, I hopefully think the pressure will lift. Work can stop feeling like survival and start feeling like a choice. I'll link the Google Sheets calculator in the show notes. Open it, run your numbers, and just let yourself see what's possible. That alone is often enough to change how heavy work feels as soon as today. Reaching Coast-Fi doesn't just change your finances. I think it can also change your relationship with time. That shift can feel surprisingly disorienting. Up until this point, work has been doing all of the invisible labor for you. It gives your days structure. It gives your weeks momentum. It gives you a ready-made answer to the question of, what am I doing with my life? When you reach Coast-Fi, that scaffolding begins to loosen, not in the same way as when you reached full financial independence, but the ties will start coming loose and you have to start doing some of the bigger work. The constant sense of urgency finally softens. And, for the first time in a long time, you're not being driven forward by panic. It does create the new questions, one that you can't avoid anymore. If I'm not running from work, and I'm not chasing freedom at all costs, then who am I becoming now? And as I've said many times before, money only removes pressure. It doesn't automatically tell you what to do with the space that opens up. So you then have to go start figuring things out. What actually pulls me forward? And that's absolutely not a financial question anymore. It's an identity question. This is also where purpose starts to shift. Purpose at this stage often looks like doing work that feels tolerable, even interesting, without it consuming you. Protecting your energy instead of burning it for optional upside. Letting parts of yourself come back online that was squeezed out by ambition. The irony is that Coast-Fi often gives more clarity about what you want, but only if you let yourself sit in the space it creates. And that space is exactly where life after enough begins. If you immediately fill that space with another pressure cooker, you're missing the point. So the real point of this episode is that Coast-Fi isn't about quitting work. It's about ending the fear. It's about knowing, in black and white, with real numbers, that future you is already taken care of, which means present you doesn't have to keep suffering to prove responsibility. Whether Coast-Fi is your long-term destination, a pressure release valve at the end of a FIRE journey, or a stepping stone towards full financial independence, it gives you something most people never realize they're allowed to have: permission. Permission to step off the accelerator, permission to choose lower stress, permission to stop optimizing every decision around fear, and permission to live well before the finish line. Once you truly feel that shift emotionally, the questions change. You'll stop asking, how much longer can I force myself to do this? And start asking, how do I want the next chapter to feel? That's life design, using money the way it was always meant to be used. If this episode did one thing, I hope it helped you see that freedom doesn't have to be all or nothing. Sometimes it starts with simply realizing you're closer than you think. Thanks for listening to Life After Enough, a podcast about money, meaning, and the life you design when work becomes optional. If this episode made you rethink your future, share it with someone who's starting to question the script too. You can follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Nick, and I'll see you next week as we keep building a life that's truly ours.